Our village is a widow's village, and no man has appeared for 10 years. One day my sisters and I were washing clothes by the river, and a strong and handsome man suddenly floated up in the river. At this time I found that there was a strange green light in the eyes of the sisters. 1. On this day my sisters in the village and I were washing clothes by the river, and something suddenly floated up in the river. It's a man! Sister Xianglan shouted excitedly. The others were also extremely excited. They dropped their clothes one after another, jumped into the water and dragged the man to the shore. Oh my God, he is so handsome, just like the male protagonist in the book. He still has abdominal muscles. The talking sister reached out and touched the man's abdomen. She was so scared that she immediately retracted her hand and screamed that her mouth was so hard. Everyone laughed out loud at her movements. That I also came up curiously. The man on the ground was naked, and his abdominal muscles were like carvings with clear lines, and each piece showed the beauty of strength. His appearance is even more handsome and extraordinary, and his facial features are deep and three-dimensional. His forehead is cut with 2 shallow openings by branches, but it still can't stop his charming charm. So this is a man. I stared at the unconscious man on the ground in fascination. I remember seeing a man once when I was very young, but for some reason the man suddenly disappeared. Later, until I grew up, there were no more men in our village. Sister Xianglan kidnapped me with a bad smile. Qingqing, you only know that he is a man, and you don't know that he can still make people happy. I looked up and asked ignorantly, how to be happy? Haha, you'll know when you're an adult. All the sisters laughed out loud. They didn't answer my question, but quarreled about bringing the man back to someone's house. He hurt his forehead. I have medicine at home. I'll take him back to take medicine. Who doesn't have your broken herbs? He must have fainted because he was exhausted. I'll take him back to cook for him. He doesn't have any clothes. It must be cold when he wakes up. I'll take him back to make clothes for him. Several sisters said and went to rob the man, and Xianglan stretched out her hand to stop them. What are you all doing? Didn't you see him faint? The most important thing now is to wake him up first. But other people don't eat the set of Xianglan. Who doesn't know that you are the only one in our village who knows some medical skills? Are you going to say that you should bring him back to your home for treatment? That's right, obviously your own mind is the same as ours. What are you pretending to be here? I don't understand why the sisters robbed this man. Is it just because he is good looking? What are you doing? Just when everyone was arguing, my mother came over at some point. Village chief. When the sisters saw my mother, they stopped arguing. When my mother saw the man on the ground, her eyes flashed with surprise. When she knew that everyone was arguing for this man, my mother showed the majesty of the village head and reprimanded them. Have you all forgotten the rules in the village? The man has filth on his body, which will affect our village luck. Don't touch it. The sisters disdained in their hearts. How can such a beautiful man be dirty? It's a pity that they don't want to throw away men like this. Village chief, as the saying goes, saving people's lives is better than building a 7-level floating slaughterhouse. If we save him, it is also a virtue for the widow village. Xianglan opened her mouth, and the others also joined in. That's right. If we don't care about him, he will be taken away by the beast at night. Village chief, just leave him for a while and let him go when he wakes up. My mother had no choice but to agree to place the man in the compartment of my backyard first, and warned everyone not to think wrongly. Although everyone is reluctant, they can only listen to my mother. It's evening. I got up in a daze and let go of my hands, but I seemed to hear a humming sound from the compartment. 2. I frowned slightly. Could it be that the man woke up? When I was about to approach the compartment, I found that my mother came out of the compartment. She has long hair and is wearing a nightgown. Even though he is over 40 years old, he still has a charm. With the help of the oil lamp in her hand, I saw that my mother's face was a little red, and the broken hair in front of her forehead was wet and sticky on her face, as if she had just finished exercising. Mom, why are you here? I felt that my mother was in a panic for a moment, but she immediately regained her calm. Oh, let me see if the man is awake. If so, let him leave. What else do I want to say? My mother urged me to go to bed quickly and have to work tomorrow. But in the next few days I could hear strange sounds coming from the compartment every night. But my mother kept saying that the man didn't wake up. Is that man seriously injured? I haven't woken up for so many days. During the dinner at night, I asked out the doubts in my heart, but my mother just hummed perfunctorily. Only then did I realize that my mother's complexion seemed to have changed a lot. Not only did his face look rosy, but even the crow's feet in the corners of his eyes disappeared. Mom, why do I feel that you have become younger? And I seem to have been hearing a sound in the compartment these nights. Could it be that the man has woken up? My mother touched her face subconsciously. If only I had really become younger. That man hasn't woken up yet. Don't be suspicious all day long. That I didn't finish my meal, and my mother urged me to do the laundry. As soon as I arrived at the river, Xianglan surrounded me with a group of sisters and asked me if the man had woken up. I shook my head. He hasn't woken up yet. It's been so many days. How can you not wake up yet? Xianglan didn't believe it. She stuffed her and that of her sisters and that of her sisters were all me, and asked me to take them to the compartment at night. No, my mother will be angry if she knows. Let's just go quietly. I couldn't result them, so I had to agree. In fact, I also want to see how the handsome man is doing. But my mother stays at home every day, and doesn't allow me to approach the compartment. In order not to be found out by my mother, Xianglan and I agreed to go in the middle of the night. But when I took them to the compartment, there was a familiar strange voice again, but it was quieter than usual, as if it was deliberately suppressing the sound. Xianglan and several sisters looked at each other and immediately ran over. Hey, be gentle and don't wake up my mother. Before I finished my words, Xianglan kicked open the door of the compartment. Okay, village chief, you are not allowed to bring the man home, but leave him here to enjoy himself. You are too selfish. That's right, we still trust you so much. Such a good thing should be used together. I finally squeezed in from behind my sisters and saw that my mother was in the compartment again. I don't know when the man in bed woke up, but he felt that his mind was a little unclear, and his whole body seemed to be confused. Mom, what were you doing in there just now? Xianglan hugged her arms and snorted coldly. Of course. Before she finished her words, she met my mother's cold gaze. Xianglan had to turn around and say that she was doing hard work, but she looked at the others and was very unconvinced. I guess it was because my mother asked the man to do some physical work for her that everyone was so unconvinced. After all, who doesn't want to have someone to help at home? Sure enough, in order to calm down everyone's anger, my mother proposed to let the man stay in each house for 2 days to help with the chores. After that day, something magical happened. As long as there are adult women in the village, they all become rosy and enchanting. I'm getting more and more curious. What kind of magic is that man? Helping with work can make those sisters and aunts change so much. One day, I passed by Xianglan's house and suddenly saw that man. But I was shocked by his appearance. I haven't seen him for only 2 months. The once strong man has now become as thin as wood. How much work did Xianglan and others let him do to make him look like this? At this time I saw Xianglan smiling and trying to pull the man into the room. The man didn't want to say anything and kept trying to break free from Xianglan. Xianglan suddenly brought a bowl of soup and forced the man to drink it. After a while, the man blushed and took the initiative to pull Xianglan into the room. At this time, I am extremely curious about what hard work they do in the house. I looked around and found that there was no one around, so I turned over the yard of Xianglan's house, sneaked to the back of the house, and looked in through the crack of the window. When I saw the scene inside clearly, my eyes widened in an instant. Point 3. Xianglan sat on the bed with half her shoulders exposed, with great joy on her face. My ears instantly turned red and dripped blood. At this time, the man suddenly turned his head and looked at me. His pupils shrank sharply. I was so scared that I turned around and ran. I ran a long way before I bent down and stopped to take a breath. Only then did I realize that the man's eyes were strange just now. It's like seeing a ghost. In the evening, the news came from the village that the man had escaped. The villagers raised their torches and chased them. Our widow's village is isolated all the year round, and the surrounding terrain is extremely complex. Without the villagers to lead the way, outsiders can't go out. Sure enough, in just one day, Xianglan and the others caught the man back from the mountain. There are blood stains scratched by branches all over his body and face. But the man didn't seem to feel the pain, and his eyes were a little strange when he looked at Xianglan. Xianglan slapped him fiercely with anger on her face. A man really doesn't have a good thing. How dare he lie to me? The women around covered their mouths and held back their laughter. Only then did I know that the man had a beautiful name called Yucheng. After I ran away from Xianglan's house, Yucheng told Xianglan that there was an exciting way to play in their city, which was to tie people up. Xianglan was eager to try, but was tied up by Yucheng. After stuffing his mouth, Yucheng ran away directly. Someone passed by Xianglan's house and knew that she was tied to the bed for nothing. Xianglan was ashamed and annoyed and vowed to capture Yucheng back. When my mother arrived, she was furious when she saw Yucheng with a yellow face and thin muscles. How did you torture him like this? The animals still have time to rest, let alone individuals. The women around booed each other and lowered their heads awkwardly. Xianglan muttered in a low voice, I haven't seen a man for 10 years. Who can stand it? My mother glared at her. Yu Cheng didn't seem to hear everyone's words, and his eyes swept over the women around him. At this time, a sister discovered the abnormality of Yu Cheng. Village chief, he seems to have been stabbed by a red bark vine. Everyone immediately dispersed when they heard the words, especially Xianglan, for fear that Yu Cheng would pounce on her. Redskin vine is a unique plant in the widow's village. The appearance is ordinary, which is no different from ordinary plants. It's just that its leaves are heart-shaped, and the fruits are red, pink and purple, which are very beautiful. The stems and leaves of the redskin vine are covered with fine fluff, which will pierce the body once touched. Although it doesn't hurt, it will make people lustless. If you want to detoxify, you can only eat redskin fruit, but the whole body will cause severe pain. Just like being sprayed with strong acid and scalded by red iron tongs. That kind of pain is simply indescribable. But only this kind of pain can suppress the lust in the body, otherwise Yu Cheng will die violently. My mother ordered Xianglan to feed the fruit to Yu Cheng. Xianglan hesitated a little. Village chief, can he bear that kind of pain? As long as you stay up until dawn, Yu Cheng will be fine. But if he doesn't hold on, he will die in the end. In fact, there is another way to help Yu Cheng detoxify, but no one dares to use it. My mother looked at Xianglan coldly. Why can't you bear to make him suffer? Then you can help him relieve the fire or take him back. Xianglan's body trembled when she heard the words, and she hurriedly stuffed the fruit into Yu Cheng's mouth. As soon as the fruit was fed, Yu Cheng rolled on the ground in pain. The miserable cry resounded all over the village. Everyone was talking about it. I'm afraid that Yu Cheng can't survive tonight, and everyone's face showed a regretful expression. Then he was thrown into the dilapidated thatched house and went home one after another. In the middle of the night, I have been thinking about Yu Cheng. I don't know if he is dead. I quietly got up and came to the thatched house. In the moonlight I saw Yu Cheng curled up in the corner motionless, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. I had the courage to walk towards him. Just as I leaned over to see clearly, Yu Cheng suddenly threw me to the ground. Woo! Before I could make a sound, Yu Cheng covered my mouth. His other hand pressed heavily on me, and his voice was hoarse. Give it to me. I shook my head desperately and let out a whimpering cry, and I regretted coming here in the middle of the night. Yu Cheng also seemed to see my appearance clearly and stopped the movement in his hand. Are you the daughter of the village chief? I nodded in a hurry. After hesitating for a moment, Yu Cheng let go of me and leaned back against the wall weakly. What are you doing here? I got up with a lingering heart, grabbed my collar and retreated to the door. Yu Cheng smiled disdainfully. If I want to touch you, do you think you will run away? I looked at Yu Cheng puzzledly. Why? Obviously, he was very uncomfortable. As long as he touched me, he could relieve the pain on his body, but he still stopped. You are still a child. My heart banged twice, which made my chest hurt a little. Looking at the man in front of me, I think he is a good person. I will be an adult tomorrow. My voice was as small as a mosquito, and my ears were red with blood after saying that. What's wrong with me? I can't believe I said such words in front of a stranger. Yu Cheng looked at me unexpectedly. What's your name? Qingqing. Your name is the same as my girlfriend, and you look alike. I looked at Yu Cheng in surprise. It seemed to relieve the pain, Yu Cheng said to himself. He said that he and his girlfriend drove on a trip, but he didn't want to have a car accident. His girlfriend died on the spot. Yu Cheng blamed himself and felt that he had killed his girlfriend and had been unable to get out of grief. As a result, when a person came out to relax, he accidentally fell into the sea and was washed here. The severe pain made Yu Cheng speechless. He curled up in the corner with his arms around him. It's okay for me to die like this. She must be lonely down there. I can accompany her. After hearing this, I rushed up and hugged Yu Cheng. You won't die. As long as you stay up until dawn, you'll be fine. Widow Village 39103. I thought he was in pain, so I hugged him tighter. Yu Cheng's body was stiff for a long time, and then gently hugged me and buried his head in my neck. Qingqing, can you give me another chance to take good care of you? Yu Cheng's voice is very gentle, and there is an inexplicable charm in the magnetism, which makes me deeply immersed in it and unable to extricate myself. If I take you out of the widow's village, would you like to take me away? Surprise flashed through Yu Cheng's eyes, and then he nodded in surprise. Qingqing, are you really willing to come with me? I lowered my head and whispered to remind. I'm Qingqing from Widow Village, not your girlfriend Qingqing. Yu Cheng happily hugged me in his arms. In my eyes you are alone. When I saw you outside the window of Xianglan's house that day, I thought I had hallucinations. Then I suddenly realized that Yu Cheng saw me that day and showed such a strange look. When it was slightly dawn, The toxicity on Yu Cheng's body slowly disappeared. I also made a bold decision. Leave the widow's village with him. The women here have stayed in the widow's village for generations, and they don't know what the outside world has become. I yearn for the flower world that Yu Cheng described for me. You don't have to walk when you go out. You can take a car, subway, or even a bird-like plane. There is no need to light the oil lamp at night. When night falls, all kinds of colorful lights will light up one after another, like a rainbow. I don't want to be trapped here forever. I want to see the outside world. I got home and quickly packed up my things. As soon as I turned around, I saw my mother standing at the door. 5. Do you want to go with that man? With a few words from him, you dare to put your life in his hands. It seems that my mother already knows that I went to find Yu Cheng last night, and I no longer hide it. Yes, I want to go with him. I believe he really loves me. My mother seems to have heard a big joke. The least valuable thing in the world is a man's sincerity. He said so purely to take advantage of you to get out of the widow's village. Once he achieves his goal, he will abandon you without hesitation, just like your biological mother was abandoned. My mother's words opened my dusty memory. When I was 8 years old, a handsome man also broke in from the village, and he was treated the same as Yu Cheng. In order to leave the widow's village, he took advantage of my biological mother's feelings. Unexpectedly, my mother had a deep affection for him. After finding out that the man cheated on her, she rolled into the redskin vine with the man in her arms and was tortured to death. The village chief thought I was young and adopted me. But now no matter how she persuades me, I am determined to leave with Yu Cheng. I don't believe that I will have the same experience as my biological mother. My mother sighed helplessly. In this case, let's make a bet. If you win, you will leave the widow's village, but if you lose, I will accept the punishment of the village without a word of complaint. When Yu Cheng saw me, he was a little confused. Didn't you say go back to pack up? Why didn't you take anything? I was afraid of alarming my mother. No one could leave at that time, so I came out as soon as I got home. Yu Cheng said nothing more and followed me into the mountain. With my lead, Yu Cheng is much more relaxed, and there is no need to go around in the woods like last time. There are forests and fog everywhere here. Last time he got lost as soon as he entered the mountain. We walked all the way for a long time until the sunlight shone through the cracks of the leaves into the woods that I realized that it was noon. We have been on the road for hours in a row. At this time I felt tired and hungry, and my legs and stomach trembled. Yu Cheng, let's take a rest. I really can't walk. Yu Cheng gasped and looked behind him. Let's walk a little longer. The farther away from the widow's village, the safer we are. Now they must have found out that you and I are missing, and you certainly don't want to be caught back, do you? A woman who left the village without permission will be thrown into the red bark vine as long as she is caught, or she will die alive after eating the fruit. No matter which one, I can't accept it. In the past, there were also women in the village who couldn't stand loneliness and wanted to sneak out of the village. As a result, they were all caught back and thrown into the red bark vine. I believe that Yu Cheng and I will definitely leave here. Ah! Just as I was about to continue moving forward, I stepped on a stone and sprayed my foot. Yu Cheng hurried forward to cover my mouth. Please lower your voice. It will be troublesome if they hear it. I have a broken foot and I can't walk. Yu Cheng seemed a little impatient, but he still squatted in front of me. Come up, I'll carry you on my back. I felt a little sorry. Just as I was about to refuse, Yu Cheng directly carried me up. Which way to go? I opened my mouth and still showed him the direction. Go straight ahead. Yu Cheng walked faster with me on his back. Because it is in the dense jungle, there are many thorny trees around, and my face is cut by branches. But Yu Cheng was in a hurry and didn't seem to notice. At this time, a red-skin vine appeared in front of me, and I hurriedly asked Yu Cheng to avoid it. 6. Yu Cheng also broke out in a cold sweat. He was tortured by that thing and almost lost half of his life. Yu Cheng asked me what it was and why it was so powerful. After listening to my explanation, he was a little confused. Then why did Xianglan and others? Yu Cheng was silent when he said this. After all, we are lovers now, and it's a little embarrassing to say that. I smiled softly. You want to ask Xianglan why they didn't let you get angry yesterday. I saw that Yu Cheng's ears were a little red, but he still nodded. After all, when he first appeared in the widow's village, the villagers' eyes were straight when they saw him. When he tuned to stay at those women's houses, those women hardly stopped. Yesterday, Yu Cheng was poisoned. It was such a good opportunity that they couldn't stand it. This is something that Yu Cheng can't think of. Now that I have decided to leave with Yu Cheng, I don't hide it from him anymore. If you are stabbed by the redskin vine, you can indeed find the opposite sex to solve it, but in this case, the toxin in the body will be transmitted to the other party. After that, the other party will immediately poison and die. Yuqing suddenly realized. No wonder those women avoided me like snakes and scorpions yesterday. It turned out that I was afraid that I would find them. At this time I pointed to a path in front of me. If you keep following this road, you can get out. Yuqing's tense face finally opened up. At this time he found that there were a lot of bloodstains on my arm and hurriedly put me down. Qingqing, I'm sorry, I'm just in a hurry. I didn't expect you to scratch the branch. I just saw a stream over there. I'm going to get some water for you to drink. As soon as Yuqiang turned around and took 2 steps, he accidentally touched the switch made by the villagers. A row of sharpened bamboos flew towards Yuqing in an instant. Be careful. I quickly got up and threw Yuqiang down. The bamboo chop brushed along my shoulder, and my shoulder suddenly became bloody. My face turned pale in pain. Qingqing. Yuqiang didn't expect that I would sacrifice my life to save him. Looking at my bloody shoulders, he was at a loss for a moment. At this time the sound of Xianglan came from not far away. There are traces of their walk here. They must be nearby. That wild man actually dares to kidnap Qingqing. When he is caught, he must be thrown into the red bark vine. As the daughter of the village head, Qingqing actually ignored the village rules and left with the foreign man privately. Once she is caught, she must not be forgiven. My heart sank for a moment. I didn't expect that my mother would send someone to arrest us so soon. Panic flashed in Yuqiang's eyes, and he subconsciously looked at the road leading out of the village. Yuqiang, if you carry me away, I have a way to get rid of them. Yuqiang looked back at me, nodded and carried me up. I took Yuqing to turn left and right, and deliberately left my blood on the road. Xianglan was determined to catch Yuqiang, but she didn't want to fall into the beast trap we had set up. That trap can trap them for 2 hours, enough for us to leave. When Yuqiang carried me pantingly and returned to the place where I was injured, he was shocked. Why did we get back to the same place? 7. They don't expect that we will come back, and there is Parasprimo nearby, which can temporarily stop the blood on my shoulder. Yuqiang's face was a little gloomy. We can find a way to stop the bleeding when we leave the village. Faced with my shocked expression, Yuqiang hurriedly changed his tone. I'm not afraid of being caught by them. At worst I will die. I'm afraid that you will be hurt again because of me, so I can never forgive myself. I laughed when I heard it. You don't have to worry. They didn't get out of the trap so quickly. As long as the blood on my shoulder stopped, we would leave here immediately. Yuqing no longer argued with me and took me to a nearby cave to settle down. Just wait for me here. I'll help you pickling grass and find some fruits to satisfy your hunger. I bled a lot, which made my face a little pale, but my heart was warm. It turned out that this is the feeling of pain in a man. I nodded and told Yuqiang how to identify baling grass, and pointed to him in the direction of baling grass, which happened to be the opposite of the path out of the village. Yuqiang told me a few words and left. At this time, my mother came in from outside the cave and couldn't help frowning when she saw my bleeding shoulder. You are so devoted to him that you don't even want your life for him. Do you think you can get his heart in this way? I told you a long time ago that men have no heart. I ignored my mother's advice and only said one sentence. He will come back. I don't know whether this sentence is for my mother or for myself. When Yuqing went out, he took the path out of the village. But the psychic grows in the opposite direction. My mother left with iron and steel. I have been sitting on the haystack and staring straight at the entrance of the cave. He will definitely come back. An hour later, Yuqing came back. A smile appeared on the corners of my mouth. But he didn't have baling grass in his hand, so he came in and hugged me. Qingqing, I love you. Will you help me? When I went to pickling grass, I accidentally fell into the redskin vine. I'm very uncomfortable now. The smile on my face stiffened on my face, and I told him in a cold voice. Only the path leading to the village is full of red vines. At this time, Yuqiang was already hot and unbearable. He stopped explaining and couldn't wait to push me into the haystack. I have a shoulder injury and can't push Yuqiang away. Even if I'm not injured, I'm not his opponent. I looked at Yuqiang with an expressionless face. You know that eating the fruit of the redskin vine can also suppress the toxicity, but you still choose to come back to me. Is this the way you love me? Yuqiang finally showed his true face. Eating that fruit can hurt me to death. I don't want to experience that kind of pain again in my life. If it hadn't been for your chirping, we would have left the village long ago. I laughed as soon as I heard it, but the tears were like broken beads, slipping from the corners of my eyes. My mother is right. Men have no heart. You have been lying to me from the beginning. Yuqiang smiled sarcastically. If I don't lie to you, how can you willingly take me out of the village? The road out of the mountain is full of redskin vines. Just now, I have rolled out of the road with my own body. Now as long as you help me remove the toxicity, I can leave this damn place without scruples. Yu Cheng was like a crazy beast showing his fangs at me. 8. A long time later, he got up with satisfaction. The woman in your village almost took half of my life. Now it's a draw to exchange your life for my life. Yu Cheng looked at me unsatisfiedly. You are the best one among the many women I have ever tasted. When I go out, I will never forget you. I sat up patiently, with a mocking smile on the corners of my mouth. Unfortunately, you can never go out. Yu Cheng immediately became alert. What do you mean? At this time, Yu Cheng's body suddenly trembled violently. It was like an invisible force, wrapping him tightly from all directions, making him unable to breathe. Yu Cheng unconsciously grabbed his neck, the corners of his mouth overflowed with blood, and his eyes gradually lost their focal length. Then his legs were weak and he fell to the ground, but his eyes were still staring at me. He didn't understand why he was still like this when he had already passed on the toxin in his body to me. I got up and squatted in front of him and looked at him with a smile. Didn't anyone tell you that women's words can't be believed? Yu Cheng opened his mouth but he couldn't say a word. He could only stare at me with wide eyes. Tell you the truth, right? The person who is stabbed by the red-skin vine, once he has sex with the opposite sex, will undoubtedly die, but the dead is the poisoned person. The muscles on Yu Cheng's face kept beating, which looked particularly ferocious. I got closer to him again. Let me tell you another truth. The place where there is psychic grass is the real way out of the village. Yu Cheng's eyes were as big as a copper bell. After struggling on the ground for a few times, he was completely out of breath. He didn't close his eyes until he died. At this time my mother, Xianglan and others came in. Xianglan kicked Yu Cheng on the ground. It's a pity to die like this. I haven't played enough. My mother came over and touched my stomach. I thought I could finally break the curse, but I didn't expect to be happy again in vain. At least there will be new members in the widow's village soon. I did make a bet with my mother. But it's not a bet on whether I can leave the village smoothly, but whether Yu Cheng can break the curse of the widow's village. The widow's village was cursed. Only by combining with a man who was stabbed by a red-skin vine can she give birth to offspring. If a man truly loves a woman, he will not die, and the woman will break the curse and give birth to a baby boy. But if a man just wants to cheat and take advantage of a woman, once combined the man will die immediately, and the woman will still get pregnant, but the one who gives birth must be a baby girl. I risked my life to save Yu Cheng, but I still couldn't let him treat me sincerely. I lost this bet completely. The widow's village has returned to its former tranquility. When the sisters were washing clothes by the river, they always looked at the middle of the river intentionally or unintentionally, looking forward to another man floating in the river. I don't know when the curse of the widow's village will be broken. End.